we are at the St. Rose Cemetery of South Hadley, Massachusetts. This cemetery has a lot of special sections in it, and I'll show you a few right now. In front of me is the baby section. This is the section where when a child is not baptized yet and they die, they cannot be allowed in the main body of what was the cemetery. The old cemetery ended right here, and so they were buried to the back right. So these children out here are a special section where they weren't baptized. It's very beautiful. It's been made up nicely. There's some modern flat stones in front, some of the older ones are towards the back. And back of that is another section. So directly behind them, you see a big pine tree behind them, but behind them is the Potter's Field. A Potter's Field is a section where people are buried that cannot afford the burial. And so they're buried without stones, they're buried usually without ceremony, and they're put here. And most Catholic cemeteries don't even have Potter Fields. Protestant cemeteries have them. But this one does, and that's a sign there must be in a fraternal group associated with the St. Patrick's Church of South Hadley or the St. Anne's Church of Chicopee, which were the two churches that owned the cemetery. They must have had a fraternal group that paid for the burials of their members who could not afford it. They didn't pay for the stones though. So what happened, you probably have in that section 300 burials, and it's probably not active anymore. Two stones must have came in later when a family, decade or two later, could have afforded stones at that point. They put them in place. So that's why you do have two stones there, but they weren't there originally. These graves are called paupers' graves. They're for poor people that cannot afford a funeral. Again, it's a Potter's Field. Now I'm going to show you the sections around it because you're at the very edge of the old cemetery. So we'll shift this direction, and we're going to see this is the start of the old section. This is where we stopped a couple times. There was a Confederate veteran buried in this section. At the edge of the section is John Conlin, the pastor who has his own priest circle. And it also has one of the oldest burials of all. Now, we're going to turn again, another shift, in the next section. This is the start of the modern section that was bought much later. The original land had been brought from a brickmaker named Michael Lynch. This section had been bought from other farmers. And this is where the new burials have been taking place since the 1880s. And you also get to see a white building. That's the modern work shed that replaced the masonry work shed that had been built by Arthur Bernier in 1935. And another shift on, and this section is a very modern section. My father's buried here. This is the 1990 to present section. Behind it, you can see a lot of open fields. That's a lot of room for expansion. And you can see a woods behind it. St. Rose Cemetery owns all that woods out to the road out there, which means 200 yards of space in one direction, 200 yards of space in the other direction. There's enough room for barrels here for the next 200 years. So they're not running out of space at all. They just got to knock down all these trees to get at that space. So it's a very useful space. Thank you for coming on this stop.